A headline nobody wanted to believe hit like a punch to the chest. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, Theo to an entire generation, was gone. The first notices were short, almost clinical. A family vacation, an afternoon swim, a powerful current, frantic CPR that went on and on. It didn't feel real, not for the kid who grew up in our living rooms and then kept showing up as a grown man with range and purpose. But this wasn't a whisper campaign or one of those ugly rumor cycles. Authorities in Costa Rica confirmed the worst, and the story that followed was as simple as it was devastating. From the jump, details didn't sit still. One outlet said Playa Cocles, another said Playa Grande, same stretch of Caribbean coast. Different names, different headlines, same ache. That's what happens when breaking news collides with a frantic feed. Names shift, locations get rounded off, early fragments echo louder than corrections. What didn't change was the spine of the account, an accidental drowning in rough water known for fast, outward rips that don't care how confident you are in the ocean. The current pulled, bystanders tried, medics tried again. He didn't make it home. If you've never felt a rip take your feet, it's hard to understand how quickly a normal swim can become a fight you're not prepared to win. People imagine waves as walls you can climb, but rips are rivers, narrow, muscular, and deceptively calm at the surface. You don't see the speed until you're already out of position. That's why experienced locals and confident tourists get caught the same way. One step too far, one set that looks harmless, one inhale at the wrong time. It's not dramatic, it's mechanical. And it leaves families asking how, to an answer that feels unacceptable because it offers no villain to blame. The most human part of the story, besides the loss, was what happened on shore. Witnesses sprinted, surfers paddled, strangers became first responders. They pulled him in and worked on him there in the sand, while others took care of the family he was there to relax with. Reports describe bystanders and the Red Cross rotating compressions, a last gasp relay that stubbornly refused to give up. There's compassion in those final minutes that never makes the trending topics, but it matters. It tells you who was around him at the end. Ordinary people doing everything they could. Then, loud as a siren, the lifeguard question. Why wasn't someone posted up at a beach with a reputation for muscle in the water? Local volunteer groups explain the ugly math, long coastlines, limited staffing, and shifting coverage that leaves some stretches unguarded even when the flags say, careful. It's not satisfying to hear that resources were reallocated. It feels like a system answer to a heart problem, but it's part of the picture. The ocean is indifferent. Policy and funding shouldn't be. And still, the internet did what the internet does. As the shock wore off, recycled clips and familiar talking points started to trend. Vague industry secrets, whispers about power circles. The same old, they don't like truth tellers narrative that comes back every time a black artist dies suddenly. Stitch after stitch tried to turn a riptide into a plotline, but officials never announced anything beyond what they saw and measured. A strong current, a rescue attempt, and a death certificate that says what it says. No hidden hand, no charges. Just the worst kind of accident. One that steals a life and leaves a story full of empty space where it should have had years. What made the loss cut deeper was everything he'd built after the sitcom glow faded. He wasn't a nostalgia act parked in reruns. He kept moving. He directed. He took dramatic roles that didn't flatten him into a type. He dropped into shows like The Resident and 911 and reminded people he could be thoughtful, wry, intimidating, tender, sometimes in the same scene. There's a quiet kind of career that doesn't scream for attention but earns it anyway. And Warner had been on that run for years. The art didn't stop at the screen. He worked as a poet and musician. Real work, not vanity credits. He contributed spoken word to Robert Glasper's interpretation of Jesus Children, a performance that sits in the kind of company that tells you he wasn't visiting the culture, he was part of it. That piece, raw, measured, and cut with conscience, connected his voice to a tradition that values language as much as melody. If you were paying attention in 2015, you saw him standing there with musicians who don't lend their names lightly. It was a signal. The kid we grew up with had grown into a man with something to say. That same mindset fueled a passion project with a title that did not apologize for itself. Not All Hood. It wasn't a show about proving respectability. It was about refusing a single story, lifting up the parts of Black life that rarely get centered without being caricatured. In recent episodes, he talked about the way language gets twisted, how excellence can be survival with style, and why honoring every thread of the tapestry matters more than performing for a gaze that never seems satisfied. It was thoughtful, sometimes vulnerable, and stubbornly uninterested in impressing the wrong people. That's a legacy too. So yes, the contradictions around beach names and early witness accounts poured gasoline on a rumor mill that is always warm. Early reports often get details wrong. That's not a conspiracy. It's human chaos, translated at speed. Fact-checkers stepped in to swat down the "is this a hoax" noise, because we live in a moment where even grief needs receipts. It's exhausting, but it's where we are. And in this case, the confirmation was swift and clear. He was gone, and the cause was the sea. When the tributes arrived, they landed like a wave of relief and regret at the same time. Co-stars, musicians, directors, people who knew him and people who only knew his work, posted stories about quiet kindness, deliberate craft, and a steadiness that doesn't make headlines but makes sets better. Friends wrote about long talks that stretched into the kind of laughter that fixes a bad day. Industry peers wrote about his discipline and his dignity. Streams spiked. Clips from old episodes and new roles resurfaced. For a week, it felt like everyone collectively remembered how much one person can shape the way we see ourselves on screen. Then the feed moved on, as it always does, and that too hurt. There's a hard truth sitting underneath all of this. We hand out flowers on timelines like they're coupons that only redeem after the fact. We call people legends when they can't hear us, and let the algorithms decide who matters in real time. Warner didn't chase that kind of relevance. He set boundaries around his family, he chose projects with intent. He built art that didn't require him to be loud, to be heard. That approach is easy to overlook, right up until the day you realize it produced a body of work that still feels solid when the volume gets turned down. Quiet can be a flex when the foundation is strong. It would be simple to end this with a comfortable cliche. Tell your people you love them. Life is short. And leave it there. Do that, yes. But also take something else from what happened on that beach and what happened online afterward. Learn how to read a rip current before your next vacation day. Learn how to spot the signs. The channel of churning water, the gap in the breaking waves, the darker, calm-looking lane that isn't calm at all. Learn how to swim sideways, not straight back. And learn how news moves, how first information is often wrong, how corrections arrive quietly, and how a temptation to connect dots can turn grief into content if you let it. Remember the version of him that didn't need a trending tab, the craftsman who kept stretching, the poet who chose his words, the father who kept his circle safe, the host who made space for conversations that didn't pander. Remember the kid who told an interviewer he wanted the success to go on, and the adult who figured out how to keep it going without losing himself in the glow. That's the story worth saving. If you came here hoping for a twist that explains everything, you won't find it. The truth is both smaller and heavier. A man went for a swim, the ocean did what the ocean does, and a community lost someone it knew and someone it was still getting to know again. Let that land. Sit with it longer than a scroll. Then carry the best parts of him forward. The authority without arrogance, the curiosity, the refusal to be boxed in, and put them to work in your own corner. That's how you make the ending mean something.